Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for Networking with NIFA. I'm going to do some quick introductions and some housekeeping things here, and then we'll get started. I'm Robin Ambrose with NIFA, and I just want to recognize Amanda Wusk and Elizabeth Fimbres, who are also on here from NIFA. And we're going to be fielding your questions today for Scott Young and Brian Barks. We're very excited to have them with us today. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about them. Scott Young is the Executive Director at the Food Bank of Lincoln. He has been there since 2001, and he joined there after a 28-year career in broadcasting. He's a 2001 graduate of Nebraska Wesleyan University with a degree in communication. And in 2011, he received an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree from Nebraska Wesleyan University. He serves on many volunteer boards, including the Bryan Medical Center Board of Trustees and the Board of Directors of Feeding America, which is America's food banking network. He's also volunteered for Lincoln Public Schools, Clinton Elementary School, the YMCA, Friendship Home, the Lincoln Children's Zoo, and the Gathering Place Soup Kitchen in Lincoln. He and his wife, Joanne, have 3 children, 2 children-in-law, and 5 grandchildren. And then also with us today is Brian Barks. And Brian is the president and CEO at the Food Bank for the Heartland. So he is responsible for the overall management and direction of the food bank for the Heartland. Before he became president and CEO in July of 2018, he was the director of philanthropy and communications at the food bank for the Heartland, which he started that position in April of 2009. You're going to see a theme here because Brian also had over 20 years in a broadcasting career prior to joining the food bank for the Heartland. He was the news director and anchor at KXNP Radio in North Platte. And then when he moved back to his hometown of Omaha, he worked for 11 years at KKAR Radio, where he served as the news director. He also worked in Phoenix, Arizona at KTAR Radio before he had moved back to Omaha. He's a graduate from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln with a degree in broadcast journalism. And he and his wife have 2 daughters, and he enjoys golf and the Huskers. So Brian and Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to hear from you. Everybody who is on here listening today, I just want to let you know, if you have questions, please feel free to type them in the question box, and the NIFA staff will help facilitate those to Scott and Brian. Or you can use the raise your hand feature. If you want to ask a question, we can unmute you and you can ask your question as well. We will be recording this today, and we'll be posting it later on our website. So with that, I think, Scott, we'll turn it over to you to get things rolling.
Robin, thank you, and thanks for inviting us to be to this gathering today. Brian and I will talk some about Feeding America, which is the network of food banks in our country. There are 200 of us, and exactly 1% of the food banks are run by former radio people. So you've got them both right here. If a radio station breaks out at the Feeding America network, Nebraska will be well represented. We want to talk to you today about food insecurity in the state and about our respective organizations. We have nothing but terrific respect for our sister organization in Omaha, Food Bank for the Heartland, and we have a wonderful partnership that stretches back many years. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of this and food insecurity and why we do what we do, and hope to bring you some information that will be helpful and enlightening for you. The mission at the Food Bank of Lincoln is to alleviate hunger in southeast Nebraska We serve 16 counties in our corner of the state. That sounds like a lot, but you'll hear Brian has a lot more of service responsibilities than we do. Why is there a food bank, or why are there two food banks in Nebraska? Our network, Feeding America, does a thing called Map the Meal Gap, and Brian's numbers may look a little bit different than mine, but for the service area of the Food Bank of Lincoln, which is the 16 counties, our latest numbers show that we have 55,570 people who are dealing with food insecurity and who need the Food Bank of Lincoln. Of that group, 17,970 are children under the age of 70. And so if you look at the food insecure population in southeast Nebraska, that would be the third largest community in our state, behind Omaha and Lincoln. So there's a lot of people. And I think one of the things that both of our organizations see and hear a lot about is that Nebraska disguises its poverty situation pretty well. In Lincoln and in Omaha, you can find poverty, but in general, the people on this meeting today and the people around our communities aren't in touch with a lot of poverty, but there's a lot more of it than you think. There are some big projected pandemic numbers that we think are headed our direction, and we'll talk a little bit about those as we go along today. We have 33 staff members at the Food Bank of Lincoln. We are in a distribution center, which is on the far north end of town. And if you are from Lincoln, if you are headed to the old dump and you get there, you've gone just a little bit too far. But we are way north of town in a small distribution center warehouse area. We are currently in the quiet phase of a capital campaign to expand and get a new building because we need a lot more square footage than we currently have. We've been in our current building since 1997, and we hope to be in a new building at the end of 2021 with any luck at all. We have 55 agency partners that we distribute food through, and about 90 school partners. And as you can imagine, those 90 school partners all closed in March or at the end of March. And so that's disrupted our distribution system quite a bit. We have child hunger programs, as do most food banks across America. We're kind of well known in our area for that. We have a backpack program. We do school markets, which are basically mobile pantry operations in several schools. We have a student parent voucher program where we give vouchers to kids who have kids but are still enrolled in high school or middle school even in our community. We also run a thing called Bridges Out of Poverty and Getting Ahead in a Just Getting By World, which is an effort to try and help people get out of the cycle of poverty. We have 6 different agency partners that run Getting Ahead classes for us in the community, and we hope to graduate around 150 households in that program here in fiscal year 21, which starts on July 1st. The idea is to get people out of the lines, to shorten the lines that the food bank serves, and we feel like that work is really important. We also have a great partnership with the Food Bank for the Heartland in our SNAP program. That is the food stamp program. The Food Bank for the Heartland and the Food Bank of Lincoln are connecting people in Nebraska to millions of meals each year. And during the pandemic, one of my observations is the healthiest work we're doing for staff and clients is food stamp outreach. It's client choice. It makes it available. It makes it convenient for people who are struggling with food insecurity. And that work we run that's led out of the Food Bank for the Heartland. We have 3 full-time SNAP outreach workers in our shop, and we collaborate on a intense basis with the Food Bank for the Heartland in that. For FY20, which mercifully ends in just a few days, we'll connect people to around 11 million meals. We went into this year thinking we would do 10.2 million, but circumstances and good fortune have brought us to that 11 million meal mark this year. I'm not sure I am sure it's not a normal year. I don't know if we'll consistently hit that 11 million meal mark in the coming years, that all remains to be seen. But it's been a most interesting time for us. It's a very difficult time for people who are struggling with poverty issues and food insecurity issues. We will continue to do our best to drive things along as we go. Brian's going to talk about his organization a little bit. We are really different organizations. It's kind of a riot to look at the two of us side by side in terms of how we operate, but we're both getting a lot of meals to a lot of folks. And Mr. Barks can talk about his organization in Omaha.
Appreciate it, Scott. Thank you. Yeah, we also have a wonderful working relationship with Scott and his team at the Food Bank of Lincoln, and a lot of respect for the work that they do. I've been the CEO at Food Bank for the Heartland now for almost 2 years, and right or wrong, I've leaned on Scott to help me through some of the bumpy patches, and boy, we're in one now. And so just to give you an idea, a little bit of a landscape of Food Bank for the Heartland based in Omaha, we serve a total of 93 counties. 77 of those counties are in our great state of Nebraska. And just for giggles, we have another 16 that we serve in Western Iowa as well. Just to give you an idea of what those counties are in Iowa, if you go up and down the Missouri River and go all the way up to Sioux City and down to Hamburg, if you go 2 counties east along the Missouri River, that is a territory that we also serve. So it's a total of 93 counties, and our challenge is that our landscape is very, very diverse in that it is urban, it's suburban, it's rural, and it's also very, very remote, which, as you would imagine, presents a significant challenge. We have 55 employees at Food Bank for the Heartland, and just to even backtrack even further than that, I know a lot of people, I'm sure Scott gets this a lot at his place. A lot of people have a perception that the food bank is a pantry, that it's where people go and receive individual assistance, and that's not how the food banking model works. Scott mentioned the number of partners that he works with. We distribute our food through a network of about 600 different partners, that be it brick and mortar pantries or emergency shelters, after school programs, schools, et cetera, and then the food goes out through those organizations. In the end of the fiscal year of 2020, we distributed enough food for approximately 23 million meals. Where that's going to go this fiscal year, it's going to be quite a bit significantly higher than that. Our location, if you're familiar with Omaha, our location is roughly 108th and L Street in Omaha, and we've been in that facility since 2011. It's 76,000 square feet, and we have more food in our building right now than I've ever seen before. But unfortunately, it's going out faster than it ever has before. So one of the things that Scott and I both wanted to talk to you about was, COVID. COVID rocked our world. Look, it's rocked everybody's world. And when all this began in mid-March, we saw a perfect storm. We got hit with the absolute worst case scenario that a food bank could get hit with. We saw a drop in food donations, donations that we typically receive from the food industry, whether it's a retail grocery store, wholesalers, manufacturers, or whatnot. Those plummeted. And the reason why is because consumer demand was so high that we just didn't receive those donations. And when at our facility, when the food that we distribute, we rely on 75% of our food being that donated product was not coming to us. That's a challenge. So we saw a significant dip in food donations. We saw a huge influx in the number of people that are food insecure. Prior to pre-COVID, in the 93 counties that we serve, it's estimated that about 207,000 people were food insecure. Now that we're in COVID, our best estimate is that in the area that we serve, we have now 296,000 people who are food insecure. And so when you see a significant drop in donations, of food donations, a dramatic rise in the number of people who are food insecure, there's really only one place that we could go to get food that we need, and we needed to buy it. And so, and then on top of that was a supply chain that was extremely clogged. We were seeing normal deliveries for us on food that we normally buy would be anywhere from maybe a week to 2 weeks. We saw delays up to a month, also cancellations of food orders because there just wasn't food out there to get. Another significant challenge that we faced was volunteers. We rely heavily on volunteers on the repackaging of food. We buy a lot of fresh produce in bulk, needing to repackage that into family-friendly sizes for ease of distribution. And so we had to reduce the number of volunteers that we accept on a daily basis from 60. We reduced it in half to 30 in order to accommodate social distancing. We also had to quickly flip our distribution model. We quickly converted our volunteer center into an assembly line of producing community boxes. These are 27-pound boxes of shelf-stable items for distribution. When a person goes to a pantry, what we prefer is for a person to walk through a pantry and for them to choose the items that they would like. Well, in order to reduce person-to-person contact, that just was not possible anymore. So we quickly started assembling community boxes for ease of distribution through our pantry partners, and also through some distributions that we do as well that are called mobile pantry that I'll explain a little bit later. We also had to rapidly organize a program in partnership with nonprofits in the schools to distribute bags of food that contained 5 breakfast meals and 5 lunch meals. And each site, we did this at 13 sites, and each site had 200 bags. And those were gobbled up quickly in a matter of a half hour or so. This summer, beginning in July, we're expanding to 19 sites. And so we're going to be distributing up to 28,000 meals per week through this distribution model. Now, I mentioned one thing that we had to do was to purchase food. On a normal given run-of-the-mill year, we're going to purchase in the vicinity of about $80,000 of food a month. In the COVID world, we have now grown that to about $800,000 a month in order to attempt to meet the growing demand of food that is needed by those needing assistance. And just to give you a little snapshot, from March 15th to May 31st, we distributed enough food for 5.1 million meals. And in an average 2-month period, we're going to distribute somewhere around 2.7 million. So that's a significant growth. Now, as I mentioned, our service area is quite large. The largest single day distribution that we have done, we did it in May and in June, both times in Grand Island, in partnership with a local church. The distribution normally on again, pre-COVID scene would host anywhere from 400 or so households being served. Each one of those distributions was 1,000, and they ran out of food in order to accommodate the people who needed it. As Scott mentioned, SNAP is a huge component of what we do, both in concert with the Food Bank of Lincoln. You know, for every meal that a food bank provides, SNAP can provide 12. It's just a much more efficient way for us to distribute food and to get it in the hands of people who need it. And again, just to give you a landscape of what the need is that we've been facing. In the month of March, our SNAP team, which in concert with the Food Bank of Lincoln, we run a hotline for the state of Nebraska to help people through the application process. Our hotline was receiving an average of 1,500 calls for assistance a week. That versus the flood of a year ago was about 600. So again, a significant rise in the number of people needing help. There are a million other things that I could tell you in regards to our response to COVID-19. As Scott mentioned, his fiscal year ends in a few days, so does ours. And typically, we would have a budget set for the next fiscal year beginning July 1st. We only felt comfortable budgeting for the months of July, August, and September. And so we have done so. And then later this summer, we'll budget for the remainder of the fiscal year. It's just been a really, really challenging time. And I will say, I've never been more proud of the staff members that we have. Now, I know many of you folks are probably out there working remotely and have challenges in regards to, what are you doing inside of your building? When are you going to bring people back? We have those same challenges too. Of the 55 employees that we have, probably 30 of them are working remotely. Me being one of them, as you can see by the wonderful pictures in my man cave. Yes, I am a hustler. So, we've been doing this work under difficult, challenging circumstances, and it's been a really hard slog. But at the same time, we've learned a lot through this that we will move forward, and we're going to be a better food bank for it in the utilization of technology and helping us do what we need to do. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Yeah, I would echo those comments of Brian's. The pandemic has been a great opportunity for learning and for reforming and trying some new things and abandoning some old things that we may or may not go back to. But it is a time of great learning and great pride too, because the staffs at both food banks and all the charitable food system across the state are working so very hard at a time of increased need and decreased resources. It is a unique situation that all of us find ourselves in, and I think that's what makes the pandemic so unique. This isn't, when you think of a disaster, you think of Hurricane Katrina and what happened in New Orleans. This disaster has affected every community in America, and food banks in general, including Food Bank for the Heartland and Food Bank of Lincoln, have kind of risen to the top of the charitable pyramid because we were in the communities before the disaster, we're in the communities during the disaster, and we're going to be here as we sort out the disaster going forward. Back in about March, our team, led by two young women that did the thinking and planning about this, divided into 3 teams: a work from home team, a green team, and an orange team. I'm on the work from home team, and then our other 2 teams alternate. So if we have a positive diagnosis in one of the teams, we still have another group of people ready to come in and do that. Brian Barks was instrumental in getting the Nebraska National Guard engaged in the fray. They started with both food banks on April 20th, and Brian called them game changers, and that is almost an understatement. The Nebraska National Guard enabled both food banks to have record distribution months and weeks and days, and they now have that deployment has ended, so we're back to scrambling in terms of volunteers and everything like that. But I would echo what Brian said. We stopped using volunteers. The vast majority of our in-house volunteers at the Food Bank of Lincoln are over 70, and they're vulnerable. They weren't very happy with me when we made that decision, but I think they've adjusted to it and realized that it was with their best interests in mind. So as food resources were going down, labor resources were going down as well. So we went to the mobile pantry model where we did outdoor distributions, which is an important part of all this. Brian talked about what we're doing now, and when we had those 95-degree days, try lifting 25-pound boxes of food all afternoon through drive-through situations at the mobile pantries. That work is very hard, and if we have to go back to that in December and January and February, which I expect that we're going to be doing those outdoor distributions this winter. What is that going to require of us in terms of equipment and heaters and tents and staffing? How are we going to staff those when the weather turns as lousy as we all know it is possible to do? So we had our biggest pounds month ever during the month of May. We distributed about 950,000 pounds through our mobile pantry operations and our agency network. And then we moved another 250,000 pounds of protein that we received from a plant here in Lincoln to some other food banks around the Midwest. So we handled 1.2 million pounds with about half the staff that would normally be in the building. And so I'm with Brian in terms of echoing the pride that we take in our staffs and our ability to be resilient and hang in there. And it's a big concern, and that's a big concern for all of you who are in the meeting today about how do we sustain this harder work and this unusual work. Do we reconvene? Do we stay out? Do we continue to work at home? How do we best approach this? One of the things I would share with you was when we began to plan around the pandemic, we really struggled until we laid out specific priorities. And we've been married to those priorities every day since. Getting food to people, staff safety, volunteer safety, and an eye on the future of the food bank. And those are the filters through which we run all of our decision making. And one of the things I would share with you is that when the NBA suspended its season and then the NCAA tournament got canceled, that was kind of an uh-oh alert for us, you know, that wow, this is really serious. And I read where the general manager of the Golden State Warriors was reflecting on how they were making the decision about suspending the league's activities. And he said we were trying to make the least worst decisions we could. And that's what so many of us are faced with, not just the food banks in the state, but all of the businesses in the state, all of the nonprofits in the state government, and the city municipal governments that are trying to make decisions. We had a meeting last night in Lincoln, our school board, and people came and said, we don't want our children to wear masks. You shouldn't require us to wear masks. Our kids shouldn't have to wear masks. And if you don't think public service decision-making is tough, sit through one of those meetings, you know. So everybody is making these decisions based on not enough information. And that's how Brian is rolling right now. That's how we're rolling in Lincoln. The other thing I would touch on, and Brian has touched on this too, is anecdotally what we're hearing from people. You know, we hear, I hate having to do this, from people who are in the food lines. I lost my job and my health insurance. I'd had that job for 30 years. I've never had to do this before. What do you need me to do? What do I have to do? What do I have to sign up and get registered for? People are in great distress. I'll shut down this portion of it with, you know, I was looking at the unemployment statistics for Lincoln, Nebraska. In April of 2019, there were 4,000 unemployed people on the rolls for unemployment benefits in Lincoln, 4,000. This year in April, there were 17,000 people who were unemployed. You know, that's almost, well, it is quadruple what it was a year ago. I don't think that means that the need has gone up 400%, but it's daunting when you start to think about people that have been laid off, some who are going to get their jobs back but won't recover that 3 months worth of income. People are in great distress right now, and we believe that distress is going to increase in the coming months. I think, you know, in the next months and years, things are really going to be difficult for all of us, not just for food banks. And housing certainly plays a role in all of that, affordable housing. And that's what I got. Brian, what have you got anything else to?
Just a couple of things that I wanted to add. One thing that I think we've seen in our area that has been playing out on a national level, according to Feeding America, is that right now, 4 in 10 people who are seeking food assistance are seeking it for the very first time. They never had to, and I cannot imagine being in that situation. I was in a situation where, gee, I lost my job in radio. No one's ever done that before, besides but I spent 5 months looking for a job, and I can remember plowing through savings and was darn near close to missing a mortgage payment, and luckily I found a job in time. But Scott and I spit out a bunch of numbers and data and whatnot, but please remember, they're real Nebraskans and real Iowans that are connected to these numbers. I mentioned the distribution that we did in Grand Island in May and June that we do on a monthly basis. When I went out to Grand Island in May, I met a Korean War vet who showed up at 6:15 a.m. for a 9:30 distribution. He was there because his son lost his job because of COVID. His daughter-in-law was out of work because of an injury, and he had a couple grandkids, and he needed help. And then, by the time the distribution starts, there's 400 cars lined up behind him at Bonner Park. These are real people that are facing really hard times, that have tough decisions to make on, okay, I've got enough money to buy food, but I don't have enough to pay rent or to pay my utilities. These are folks that have to make some really tough decisions every single day. And another thing that I would also add is that we saw a huge uptick in the number of people that got thrust into the food insecurity arena following the Great Recession. According to data from Feeding America, it took 10 years following the Great Recession for the number of food insecure people to drop to pre-Great Recession numbers. So I initially thought, okay, we're going to be at this maybe a year or two. It's going to be a lot longer than that. This is not going to get solved overnight, which is why the support that Scott and I need, and all food banks around the country need from people, is both in time, treasure, and talent. And it's going to be a long, hard slog for us, but we're not going away. We're here to help. That's what we're here to do. That's what we do really well, and we're committed to doing what it takes to feed our neighbors in Nebraska and our neighbors in Iowa as well.
One thing I would add is, Brian and I were exchanging notes about what we were going to talk about today, and I was out on my deck last night. I grilled a burger, had a nice cold glass of beer. It's beautiful. It was a perfect evening last night, and I've got my laptop and I'm out there working. But this is called the lottery of the womb. Warren Buffett calls it the lottery of the womb. If you are born into a middle-class family in Nebraska and you grow up and there aren't addiction issues in your household or family, and you have stable parents, you're in the top 1% of wealth in the globe. And I didn't do anything to earn that evening on the deck last night. I've got people that we serve that will never have that kind of evening on the deck in a safe neighborhood, paid for home, enough income. And it's the lottery of the womb. And a lot of us that are on this meeting today hit that number. We hit those lottery numbers and have been very fortunate in our lives. But there are a lot of Nebraskans and millions of Americans who didn't hit that lottery number and need a lot of support. And the pandemic has made already a bad situation much worse. So lots of work to do, lots of interesting work to do in Nebraska. NIFA has some interesting challenges ahead of it, and we'll learn a lot during the pandemic and what all unfolds over the course of the next months. But we appreciate being with you all today and would be happy to have some questions if you have any. I think we're going to do that through the text or the text box. Robin, is that it?
Yep. Thank you guys so much for all the information you just shared with us. And we do have a bunch of questions coming in here, so I'll just start fielding them, and whoever wants to take them, feel free. The first one is, do you have enough volunteers or are you needing more?
You go
I'll,
first, Brian.
I'll start at Food Bank for the Heartland. The one thing that that we saw immediately, in March was we rely heavily on corporate volunteers, and naturally, we saw those folks cancel immediately, and I don't blame them. I would have made the same call. So we made it a push for individual donations or individual volunteers, and for families, church groups, those kind of sources. And I'll tell you, I'm incredibly proud of where I live, and people stepped up. Our volunteer calendar is for the most part pretty full, but we are going to be needing volunteer help for a long time. And in our place, you can sign up pretty darn easily by just going to our website at foodbankheartland.org. Click on the volunteer tab, and you can pick out a time and see what shifts are open and pull a 2-hour shift. So yes, we are going to need volunteers. We lost the National Guard, loved them while we have them. This just in, they're highly productive people, and we need more folks to fill in those slots. So yes, volunteer help is needed.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. We've put some parameters there that we don't usually have in place, like you have to be 18 to 59. And there's some health questions and waiver questions, but we're looking for volunteers as well. And like Brian, we've had a lot of people step up and say, we'll help. And our email, our website address, same deal, lincolnfoodbank.org. If people want to get signed up to register. And a lot of it is going to be pre-packing bags that we distribute and working at food distributions. So yes, we do need volunteers. We're having a good sign up, but we're going to need them for months.
Okay, great. Next question is, has COVID-19 and the social distancing brought about any changes in your objectives or in your operations that you can see remaining in place for the long term beyond the pandemic?
Great question. And obviously Scott will want me to go first. You know what? The answer is yes. Our operations will definitely change. And I think the operations of the partners that we serve will also change. Some of the two biggest partners that we have here in Omaha are Heart Ministry Center and Together Inc. They are distributing food through a drive-through method. I mentioned earlier that what they have done previously is, they have clients come in and go through the line and pick out the food items that they'd like. They're looking at moving forward in operations as doing some kind of a hybrid in regards to doing both a drive-through and we call it choice pantry system. So yes, that will change. That means that will change for us. So these pantry boxes that we are assembling that we normally don't, we will probably continue to do that on some scale. Technology has been a huge benefit for us. We have a certain segment of our workforce working from home. There's a good chance some of them will not come back to the office because they've been highly productive, even more so productive at home than they have been at the office. And so one of the things that we just piloted on the SNAP side is typically we will have people go out and do what we call outreach, where they will go out to, whether it's a homeless shelter or whatnot, and take applications for SNAP benefits. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we piloted doing this via Zoom at a local homeless shelter, and it went unbelievably well. So that's a process that very likely could change, and we could implement in our process as well. So yeah, there's going to be a number of learnings. I can't wait for the day, really, honestly, that we can sit back, take a really large breath, and look back at the work that we're doing and take time to really think about what are the things that we're going to move forward with. Right now, it's still a really frenetic pace.
Yeah, I agree. We're in an emergency situation still, even though restrictions are loosening. but Brian mentioned it, and you've seen scientists and medical experts talk about the idea that we may have social distancing for the foreseeable future. You know, that this is going to matter, that we don't congregate in large groups, which is a lot of what the charitable feeding system is about, is you get 200 people in a line together, and you don't want to be doing that in the coming months. And so I think social distance will be one of the big things going forward here for both organizations and for many businesses. Is how do you put people in office spaces and in warehouse spaces. We're talking with an architect, and architecture may be changed by the pandemic in terms of stacking. You're not going to stack people on top of each other going forward as we plan our next space. So I think social distance and technology are going to continue to be a huge part of this. And as Brian mentioned, food purchasing, we're going to have to spend more money on and raise more money on food. For the next 12 to 18 months, there's little question that we're going to have to raise more money for food purchasing, that's not the model. That's not the deal, but it is now, and may be for quite some time. So big changes, I think, to food banking, and I think that's okay. Some of them will be more difficult than others, but I like change, and we're going through a lot of it right now. So there's a lot to like about all this.
Yeah, there's one other thing that I will add. Matter of fact, before this call, I just got done speaking with one of our members of our leadership team. Years ago, with our service area being so large, we contemplated the idea of mailing food. But we just laughed. It's like, oh, that's not possible. We're looking at a grant opportunity right now with the idea of mailing people food. So yeah, there's going to be changes coming to our business.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is, what is your preferred way to get donations right now? Is it product? Is it money? I think I might know the answer, but I'll let you guys say.
I'll go first here, Brian, just to give you a break since this is an easy one. We always say in Lincoln, whatever makes a donor feel the best is what they should do, because we're happy to get either. Dollars at the food bank go further than if anyone in the audience today goes to a grocery store and buys $20 worth of groceries, that will happily take that. Our $20 goes a lot further because of buying by the semi-load. So our dollars stretch a lot farther than an individual consumer can stretch it. But we're happy to get what makes sense to the person that's doing the giving. Brian?
Yeah, completely agree. The one thing that I would add is that, pre-COVID, at our food bank, our metric was that if you give us $1, we can distribute enough food for 3 meals. Scott, I think yours 1 and 3, I think. But
yes.
But since we're purchasing so much food, we're not using that metric anymore. I'm sure it's not the case anymore. But that being said, as Scott mentioned, we're buying food by the truckload, and we're getting not just 1 or 2 trucks, a week. We're getting 8 a day. I mean, it's just, so yes, it'll go farther. Money will.
And the scale of this, for those of you that are on the meeting today, is so much larger than most people understand. If anybody comes to our food bank, one of the first things we hear is, wow, I didn't know that was this big, or, that you have these trucks and, it's semis and forklifts and big spaces. And I think people have a tendency to think of the pantry model where, it's kind of small and intimate and all that thing. It is a larger food business is what it is. So the scale is great, and that's part of our buying power.
Can you talk a little bit about just where you're getting that food from? I'm sure it's commercial distributors, but are there common ones that you can always rely on, or is it a very artful dance? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
You've
The
never
answer is
seen me dance, otherwise you wouldn't apply artful to it, Robin. But I mean, we get food from the United States Department of Agriculture, which has been critically important, particularly these last 2 years. We purchase food. We get food from our retailers, wholesalers, and manufacturers in our area. And you know, I mean, the two biggest elements at the Food Bank of Lincoln right now would probably be USDA food, Department of Ag food, and purchase food. That Brian has more food opportunity in Omaha.
yeah. When it comes to the purchasing of food, we rely fairly heavily on Feeding America. That they have a network of, we'll call them vendors or brokers or whatnot, that we purchase food through, because we're kind of purchasing them as a group of food banks, so the prices are better. But we're also buying locally as well. We have a partnership with a local produce distributor that we're buying local produce from as well. And that's another thing that we need to mention as well, is that the food that we're buying, you know, when people think of a pantry or a food bank, they think of a bunch of cans of corn and green beans. Yeah, well, there's a lot of corn and green beans, but there's a lot of also produce. Of the 23 million meals that we did a year ago, you know, of that, probably 5 to 6 million pounds of it was produce. The number one item that leaves our distribution center is produce. We believe very strongly in providing food for a healthy diet.
Great, thank you. This next question's a big one. It is, how do you see your organizations and the food security in Nebraska changing over the next 5 to 10 years?
I'll go first. I think the Feeding America, based on what I've seen, and Brian may have seen something different, they're projecting that the pandemic is going to cause a 16 to 17% increase in food insecurity in the next 12 months for people in general, and a 24 to 26% increase in food insecure kids. So, and one of the things that we talk about at our organization is if there's 100 people that need us and we're getting food to 80 of them and 25 more people come in, what does that mean? You know, because I would say that we're not reaching everyone that we need to reach. And so when you have these increases, you just need to keep bringing more food in and getting more food out in hopes that some of these increased food insecure numbers are served. But it's a real challenge. It is so I mean, we're looking at some big increases here that we'll do our best to meet those needs, but it's going to be nothing but a fight.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is tough for me personally, probably tough for Scott and food bankers as in general to say, is that, you know what, prior to COVID, I'll be honest, we weren't meeting the need. We weren't. And we're not meeting it now. Now we're doing a lot of heavy lifting,
Yep.
You know, this is, you know, if our nation is waiting for the food banks to solve the food insecurity problem, we're going to be waiting for a long time. We're going to be waiting forever. This is going to be a group thing. We cannot do it alone. We have a huge role in it and gladly accept that role. But moving forward, you know, wonderful timing by us is that, you know, we were due to update our strategic plan for the next 3 years starting July 1. Well, when COVID hit, if our strategic plan was a football game, we would have been at the 2-minute warning of the fourth quarter. And so we had to push pause on it for a little bit, but yet, you know, we found it important enough that we carved out enough time to finish it up, and we did. And so what our plan calls for, because our service area is so big, is that we as a food bank have been too transactional in our food banking, meaning that we, you know, we kind of check the boxes when it comes to our, you know, our partners, our stakeholders, We don't do a lot of relationship building, and that's going to change moving forward. We need to be a more relational food bank where we get to know our partners, get to know the barriers and challenges that are faced in communities from Scotts Bluff to Omaha, from Sioux City to Hamburg. You know what? The answers to food insecurity in Omaha certainly look different than they do in Brainerd, Nebraska. And we have not done a good enough job in understanding what that looks like. I probably not answering your question, the question appropriately, but that's one thing that we're pledging to do is to get people out in those communities to better understand what are the challenges and what are some of the unique things that we can do to help not only feed people, but to shorten the line so people don't have to get in the line in order to seek food assistance. That's something that we're pledging to do, and it's going to be a lot of work, but we're jacked up about it to do it and get about the business of doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got a hand raised here, so Kathy, I am going to unmute you and you can ask your question. Kathy, you can ask your question.
I was wondering about the mobile pantry idea. I think Brian had brought that up.
Sure. Yeah, a mobile pantry is it's a one-day direct distribution of food to people who need it. Just to give you an example, I'll use Grand Island as an example. We partner with a local church in Grand Island where we bring out on a normal pre-COVID, we plan on serving roughly 400 households. We bring out enough food for about 400 households. We drop that food at a location. The church provides the volunteers. They market the distribution of food to the community, and then people show up who need assistance, and they get it. The food that is on our mobile pantries vary everything from fresh produce, shelf stable, dairy, bakery, run the gamut. On average, depending on the size of the family, on average, people walk away from our mobile pantries with about 7 to 10 days worth of food. We do about 35 to 40 different mobile pantries across our service area a month. Due to COVID, that number's probably gone up by anywhere from a handful to 10 additional.
Okay, thanks, Brian. The next question that I have here is, what are some of the basic resource materials shared by all of your partners to cope and recover? I'm thinking about helpline numbers and treatment numbers, etc.
Yeah, the range of human service agencies that the food banks serve include homelessness, child programs, addiction programs, shelters, domestic violence shelters, after school programs. So all of these agencies across the state are providing their own information. And then I was on a call this morning about 211, which is a reference point for a statewide reference point for you can seek whatever you need on that line. And then the websites of the food bank have a lot of information as well. Information and referral is difficult, though. I would say more so for immigrants probably. And so, but there are cultural centers that help with specific populations. But getting word out about all of this is a challenge because it changes. You know, the minute Brian or the food bank of Lincoln puts out something about a pantry and its hours, about the time you get that out, the pantry changes its times and hours, so it is a real challenge, but there's a constant flow of information to people on where they can find resources, but it's a challenge.
Okay, and then the next question is, are you accepting donations? And I think, well, I'll let you answer, but as far as like donations of product right now.
Brian?
Yes, we are. If you want to donate product, we will gladly take it. Right now, what we've done at our facility, if you want to donate some food, we've placed donation barrels out in our front door where you can just drop by and drop it off. If you have a pickup truck full of donated product, you can drive right into our building. You can stay in your vehicle. We have staff that will offload that product to us, offload that product, and then you can just drive off in a no contact way. Monetarily, absolutely. And you can make that online on our website.
Yeah, at the present time, we're not accepting individual or food drive food because we don't have the staff in the building to deal with it because they're out distributing food. But in the coming weeks, I think that will loosen up a bit. You know, and some of the context for all of this is what's going to be going on in October, you know, and the answer is who knows. And so, but you know, if somebody wants to make a donation of food to the food bank, they should give us a call and see if we have people ready to accept it. You know, but in general, we don't have a lot of staff in the building right now. They're deployed.
Okay. Great. Next question is, what training and technical assistance has been made available to food bank partners participating in assisting with the applications for the PEBT card starting June 22nd?
Great question. Yeah, what we have on the SNAP hotline that Scott and I referenced that is housed at our food bank that we both have staff that work it. Wow, did we get a response from that? We were posting on our Facebook page saying, hey, if you have a child that gets free and reduced lunch, you qualify for this. We did it, I think it was late afternoon. When they walked into the office, they had 600 voicemails of people that were seeking that type of assistance. So our staff has been trained in regards to helping people go through that application process. Thankfully, it is short. And I believe I heard yesterday on our all staff meeting, normal day of business, we'll do about 40 apps a day. COVID, 75 a day. Yesterday, they did 300.
No.
Wow.
It's something. The food stamp piece to me is really valuable right now. It requires less staff. It's healthy. It's healthy for staff, healthy for client. It's a great way to go right now. And Brian mentioned this. I think this does need to be said. The biggest feeder in America is the U.S. government, by far and away. And food banks are able to supplement and support what the government is doing. But that's important. And when we think about schools being open or not in the fall, and everybody's planning on opening, but if you look at the number of kids being fed free and reduced lunch in the Lincoln Public Schools and schools across the state, the food bank can't touch those kinds of numbers. So the government and our taxes play a critically important role in getting people fed. And there's going to be a lot of reliance on those processes in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, clearly.
Another question along those lines, are there any outreach efforts planned to share information about the PEBT card to families who may be experiencing homelessness who are not enrolled in SNAP or TANF?
Let's see. We work really closely with the Department of Health and Human Services, and so outreach is going out through them. Obviously, but the Omaha Public Schools is a huge they're going to have more kids on free and reduced than anybody, any district in the state. We have been in communication with them. in regards to the potential of doing robocalls to those families who are eligible. Not yet, because our team is swamped. So that kind of outreach is being considered, and will be done when the timing is right. Doing it right now, our team simply couldn't handle it. For the rest of the state, we would love to engage with the school districts across the state in order to make that happen as well. But again, we're talking so many numbers. We don't have enough staff to be able to do it. Department of Health and Human Services has a role to play in this as well. I know they're doing in person and also online, processing online, but they're not doing anything over the phone.
Okay, thank you. I know we're running a little bit over, everybody, but we're going to keep going. We got a lot more questions, and Scott and Brian, as long as you guys are okay to keep going here, we'll go over our hour time slot. Next question is, we're talking a lot about urban areas. What do you suggest for rural farmers and ranchers who have been struggling, especially now due to COVID?
You know, this is one of the biggest problems that our two food banks and a lot of food banks face. We're best at what is easiest.
Whoop, Scott is frozen.
Oh, I think Scott froze up.
I think where he was going, and I can finish up.
Thank you,
Our
Brian.
food banks are really good at doing what is easy. Doing what is complicated is really hard. This just in. You know what? Our heart breaks for those. You know, we've heard the stories of, you know, of produce being plowed under and milk being dumped down the drain, and hog farmers having no place to take, you know, their hogs to market, and it oh my gosh, it's heartbreaking. You know what, we have tried to engage in some conversations with the Department of Agriculture in order to try to connect that dot. How can we get this grower, this producer who has product, how can we get it? How can we connect the dots? And that's really, really hard, because, you know, I'll use the dairy farmer as an example. You know, again, we've heard of dairy farmers dumping product down the drain. How is it that we can get that product to a producer who can package it so that we can accept it and distribute it? You know, we have no ability to handle and distribute raw milk. We just don't. It's that dot that we're having a hard time connecting. And if we can get that dot connected, you know, that would be very, very obviously very, very beneficial. Now, we did get a donation from the Nebraska pork producers, both food banks, where through the through UNL, the Animal Science building, where we received a donation where a hog farmer had some product that he couldn't bring to market and wanted to donate it, and we took, I believe, 1,700 pounds worth of pork product. That was awesome. But I mean, if there's nowhere to go in order to get that, whether it's beef or hogs, to get them, you know, butchered, and because you go to a small town butcher, they're booked up. I mean, I went to North Bend for a quarter cow, and they're booked up till, you know, late in the year. They just don't have any bandwidth. Nobody has any bandwidth to handle that.
Scott, welcome back. We're glad that you you froze up there, but Brian jumped in and saved the day. So
well, and he's going to tell me that was his most brilliant pearl of wisdom of the whole morning, and I just missed it. So
no, I figured you'd freeze up on the hardest question that's out there.
Okay, next question is, how can we advocate for Nebraskans who are food insecure, and where can we find resources and information to support our advocacy efforts?
I'll go first on that one in case I freeze up, but you know, this has to do with supporting people and advocating, you know, with our elected representatives, both at the legislative level, the city and county levels matter, and our federal representatives as well. Both food banks work those phones and invite those folks into our organizations. They're getting pulled a lot of different directions, as we all understand. But, you know, making food insecurity and poverty issues matter to our elected officials, and that's difficult, that's challenging, because there's, you know, so much is being invested in lobbying, and low-income people don't have a lot of lobbying resources. And so, you know, who are our elected officials hearing from? But I think being involved in the processes, voting is important, and all of these advocacy things matter. And the food bank for the Heartland has committed to more advocacy in FY21. And Brian put the arm on me to get more involved in it as well, and we're doing that. But it's a grassroots thing. People love to hear from their constituents, and I would encourage everybody about that to ask our folks to not forget the 10 to 15 to 20% of people who are being left behind.
Yeah, if you're looking for great resources to maybe educate yourself or educate others, I would strongly encourage you to check out the two food bank websites. On a national scale, I would urge you to go to feedingamerica.org. There's a tremendous amount of information on a national scale, and I believe also there you can locate. Say you live in Buffalo County and want to know how many food insecure people are in Buffalo County, you can find that information. And when Scott mentioned being able to reach out and touch your elected representatives, I was in a session about a year or so ago where it was state lawmakers talked about what was the most influential, what influences them the most, whether it is, you know, group rallies or, you know, individual phone calls, letters, emails, or whatnot. They all say individual. If you take the time individually to reach out and tell your elected representative this is an issue that you think is serious enough and needs to be addressed, that moves really high up their radar screen. So I would really encourage you to reach out to your elected representatives.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how has the refrigeration grant project that was spearheaded by Midwest Dairy impacted your ability to distribute dairy and produce? And how has the distribution of refrigerated dairy products been affected during COVID? And what are the limitations on the food box program? Do you have refrigeration to facilitate it?
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, the Midwest Dairy Association put together this package of dollars for pantries to get some refrigeration equipment. Those got snapped up quickly because a lot of our smaller pantry partners really need that. I don't know what the status of that is at this minute, so I don't want to speculate about it, but I do know that thing really worked and helped a lot of pantries get some refrigeration taken care of. Brian mentioned produce, and dairy is another one. That all requires refrigeration and cooling. And so the more of that we can put into our larger systems, the better off we are. Both food banks have a lot of refrigeration in our buildings. We need more. I don't know where Brian would be on that, but you never have enough cooling system, it seems like. But the Midwest Dairy Association put that package together, and that benefited a lot of small agencies, which benefits the food banks as well.
Yeah, on the CFAP food, for folks that don't know, that's a coronavirus food assistance program. Basically, what that program is I'm a grower in community X, and I have X amount of product, and I write a an RFP to the USDA that says I can, or a distributor, and I can get X amount of product to the food bank, and it'll cost me this much money. USDA awards that contract, and then the food starts coming to us. We've been getting a lot of CFAP food from a vendor in Kansas City, and some of the produce is coming from the state of Nebraska, which is obviously a good thing. That product has been, like the National Guard for us, has been a game changer. First of all, it's wonderful product. It is premium grade A product. It's a mixed box of produce that is ready to distribute. We don't have to have volunteers touch it. We can just flat out distribute it. And so we've been distributing it locally through our partners at Together and Heart Ministry Center. We're working on a process to get that product also out into the hands of our rural partners as well. And another thing that we are doing is we have partnered, typically at the food bank, what we do during our summer feeding program, summer meals program, when kids go to schools over the summer to get, a lunch meal or a breakfast meal or whatnot, and that meal is reimbursed by the federal government. What we saw years ago was that parents were not able to go in and eat with them. Being someone who grew up in a strong belief that family dinner time was important, and also raising two kids that, quite honestly, if you wanted to see my wife's head explode, if the kids scheduled something during dinner time, was not good. So family meal time is important. And so what we would do is we would get grant funding to pay for parent meals throughout the summer. And it would be in the vicinity of about $50,000 to $60,000 that we would cover. This year we sent out an RFP asking school districts in the metropolitan area, what's your estimate? How much do you need? That dollar figure came back at $2.2 million. Not doable. So what we did is we reached out to more vendors who had CFAP food, and we are bringing that product directly to the school districts to hand out on a weekly, monthly, whatever the districts think is appropriate. And again, that product is phenomenal, and it helps the local growers, it helps the distributors, it helps and the families who need the food. So it's been awesome. That's been a great program. And I know the USDA is looking at extending it as well. I hope they do.
Yeah.
Another great question. How do you help individuals with disabilities if they don't have a car or can't get there to receive the resources right now? How are they receiving food?
That's a real challenge. People can go to the mobile pantries with a proxy, we call it, they can get food for another family or another household if they need to. That's kind of an iffy proposition. I was on a call this morning where the United Ways in Omaha and Lincoln are both working on a DoorDash promotion where we'll do some home delivery things. But I would say people on disabilities and shut-ins, that's an underserved population for both food banks. It is the home delivery model is gaining more traction across the network of food banks, but it requires a lot, and I think we're all ready to do it, but it's complicated, and during the pandemic, it's needed more than ever, but we may not have the help to implement the program. But so I think that's one of the futures for both organizations is some form of at-home delivery system, which could or would include our agency partners, not just the food bank taking that work on.
Yeah, I would say, again, one of the hidden blessings of COVID is the fact that we've been forced to speed date with a lot of organizations that may be in our business of wanting to feed people, but maybe have a different model in doing it. And so there's a couple of organizations that we've begun to partner with that do such work And so the wheels are starting to turn in regards to, whether it's the seniors, those on disability, getting food into the hands of folks who can't go out and get it. And so we are making headway. Is it fast enough? No. Is it enough? No. But we are working there, and we recognize the problem. And what's really cool is that COVID, as bad as it is, has forced us and pushed us into that arena, which we are gladly able to do. There's just a lot of work behind getting it done.
Okay. Another question, is there an intake process for individuals that are asking for food? Do they need to bring an ID? What do they need to know before they come to you?
Yeah, when people go to a mobile pantry, we don't ask for ID. We don't ask them for a pay stub. We just ask what zip code are you in and how many people in your family. That way we know how much food they need. And one of the things that, our pantry partners have their own rules that they follow. We don't dictate what their rules are. But look, one of the things that Scott will, I think, join me in on this. Are there people who game the system to get food that they really don't need? Yes, there are. But I believe that those folks are the overwhelming, minute minority of the people who really need food. Now, ask yourself, would you show up at 6:15 in the morning in Grand Island, Nebraska at Bonner Park and wait 2.5 hours in a car before receiving food at 9:30? Probably not. We believe that folks who need food have enough barriers in front of them. They don't need another one when it comes to proving that you need help.
Agree.
Great, thank you so much. The next one is there a way for us to get printed information that we can share with our partners? And I just want to mention, if there is anything that you guys would like us to push out, we'll share that along with this video today. But I'm sure you guys have resources on your websites as well.
Yeah, that'd be my best suggestion, is go to either food bank's website. There's a lot of information on there, most of which, or the important stuff, is printable. And there's a lot of information there, so I would encourage people to go to lincolnfoodbank.org or
foodbankheartland.org.
Great, and we'll make sure to share your websites along with this video and anything else you guys would like us to include. There's a couple more questions. I'll get to them really quick. They're a little bit shorter. Can you accept local produce?
Yeah, we do. We have, and again, this depends on who's in the building at the time, but we have several gardeners who bring excess produce out to the Food Bank of Lincoln, where they drop it off at one of the Campbell's locations here in our community. But we see more and more people bringing their garden produce to the Food Bank of Lincoln, and we're happy to get it, and we distribute it within 24 hours, generally speaking. So unless it's a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, but we move a lot of produce that way. Brian mentioned this earlier. We did 3 million pounds of produce this year so far, and Brian's talked about 5 million pounds. We're moving a lot of produce, and it's coming from a lot of different directions.
We'll take it, yes.
Okay, great. Another question, when school gets back, hopefully going, do you see the backpack program continuing, Scott, and that work that you do through LPS and the schools?
We're planning around that, and we have to assume that it's going to happen. we have to wait. We're planning as if it will be a regular school year that starts August 12th in Lincoln, and we'll show up at 2:58 or whatever the time is at a given school. But I also expect that as we prepare for that, we have to know that whatever the school districts are saying, that this may or may not happen. There's so much unknown, but school districts have to plan. The Omaha school districts and area school districts have to make a plan, and the food banks have to go along in those plannings. But we all have to understand this may not be what actually happens. So we're planning on it, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Our food
swear
bank,
by it.
we are planning and moving forward as if the backpack program will be going on. At our food bank, we partner with about 260 schools throughout the state in our service area and do about 8,400 bags of food each week. We typically start our backpack program after Labor Day because we anticipate schools will be starting early in August. We are starting to ramp up the production, the packaging of that backpack food, and we'll have it ready to distribute in mid to late August.
Okay, great. Well, just a couple other comments that are from those saying great information. Thank you guys. I guess in closing, what would you say to somebody who says, you know, I want to do something, I want to help? How can they most help right now for you guys?
I'd say go to the website, you know, whether you want to volunteer or donate dollars or serve in some capacity, the websites of both food banks can hook you up. And I would encourage, as we've both indicated, this isn't a this week only deal. This is a long haul deal. And so if you can't donate or volunteer now, there may come a time in the next 6 or 12 or 18 months when you can, and we'll need you then.
One other thing that I would add is that, you know, if you're not in Omaha or Lincoln and you want to get involved, first of all, the best thing to do, as Scott mentioned, is arm yourself with information. You know, every single county has a problem. They have people they struggle putting food on the table. Every single county. Every county in Nebraska, Iowa, and the rest of the country. It's a problem. One, to recognize that and understand it and arm yourself with information. Two, if you're not in Omaha and Lincoln, I would really urge you to get involved, whether it's at your local pantry, because one of the challenges that we face, not unique to us, but the food banking industry as a whole, generally speaking, the folks who are operating those brick and mortar pantries are seniors. And who is it that's going to come behind them when the seniors say, you know what, I don't want to risk COVID, or you know what, I'm too tired. I've done my gig, and I just want to move on. Who's going to step up behind those seniors and keep those pantries running to serve the people who need help? You know what, that is a huge area of need across our state and across our country right now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much. I think the work you do is tremendous, and you know, for those of us that are in housing, you are an amazing partner. You know, housing and food, two basic needs that everyone should have. So I just want to thank you both for joining us today and for all the information you shared with us. I think Elizabeth and Amanda are going to hop back on here too and share a couple announcements.
Robin, I don't know if you've got to this one question about would they be allowed to use quotes from this presentation if they gave proper credit?
Ooh, thank you. I didn't see that one, Elizabeth.
As long as everything is,
You can use Brian's. Yes, that would be fine.
yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Now, if it's wrong, it's attributed to Scott. If it's right, it's attributed.
Right. I'll take that one.
The only thing I had to add is next week we do have another webinar, and it's on the National Housing Trust Fund. And just keep an eye on our website because we'll continue to be doing webinars for the duration.
And I just had a quick announcement to make. June is Home Ownership Month, and NIFA is hosting a Facebook contest right now. So there's still time to get entered. If you just go to NIFA Housing Facebook page, any Nebraska resident can be entered to win some really cool prizes. So spread the word and good luck to everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Scott and Brian, thank you so much again. And to everyone joining us, thank you. And everybody take care and stay well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.